Welcome back to the Family Ties podcast. My name is Julia Avery, and this is my sister and fellow co-host, Kelley Ritchie.
Hi, guys. We're back again.
Yes. So, this case that we're covering today, just reading it initially made me feel like I was going to throw up. It's rough, and but it really needs to be talked about. It's very recent. Kelley found this case, and she's going to go ahead and kind of set the scene for us. It's basically, at least this one doesn't involve a death. It's a near-death experience, but at least something happened enough for the authorities to see that something was going on and get the kids out of there. So, Kelley, why don't you kind of set the scene for us since you found this case?
This is taking place in North Annville Township in Pennsylvania. Basically, this begins with an 11-year-old being rushed to Penn State Health Milton South Hershey Medical Center mid-January, so super recent, after he was found to be unresponsive and hypothermic. Medical staff determined bruises to the child's neck, shoulders, back, abdomen, hip, genitals, and found that they were not consistent with accidental injuries. So they reported this to the authorities, and the official case against Stephanie and Robert Duncan was officially opened on January 13th. Basically, there were 5 children involved. There was
Adopted.
All adopted. It's a tale full of abuse, neglect, torture, imprisonment, and really, I can't think of anything that this doesn't involve. So I could go on forever. So let's dive right into that.
All right. So, real quick, this all happened. So, like Kelley said, this was in North Annville Township. Did I say those in the right order?
Township.
North Annville Township, right?
Yeah, you get it.
Okay. In Pennsylvania. We tried to find pictures of inside the house by looking at the house on Zillow, but it seems like it's kind of sealed, or it's just never put out there in the first place. But it's just got a street view of the house and a couple details. It's like 152 square feet. It's got one bathroom for them all to share. Just short of an acre. It's so just kind of setting the scene. It's not a super nice house. It kind of looks a little bit more I don't know. Yeah, it's not the nicest place.
I like how you held yourself back from judgment there.
Yeah, I mean, and I
but
can
yeah,
say
it's a pretty
that,
depressing
I can say
looking
that
house
because I've lived in what other people would call the ghetto before. I've been where people get shot. I've been there before. So I'm allowed to say when something looks not nice.
You tell it, Julia.
I feel like I'm entitled to say that. Anyway, so back to it. That's a house. And then some of the people we're dealing with, we've got Stephanie Duncan, and then we've got Robert Duncan, the couple. They adopted 5 children through what Kelley found was I think a private adoption agency.
Yes, and their names are not listed here, but we will
probably for confidentiality's sake.
Yeah,
since they've
we
been
will
rehomed.
we will name the kid. I saw somebody calling him James, just to kind of have a name there. So we'll refer to him as James.
And James was the 11-year-old, right?
Yes, he was the 11-year-old who
kind
of started all this investigation, which
mainly
shouldn't even be.
And that's as a result of him being the one that they focus their torture on the most, which even the other kids testified to. So there's that. So we really don't have names of all the other people, but then there are neighbors as well involved who actually did, or at least stated, that they did their due diligence with reporting this years ago. Um, I think as far back as like 2019, them
Yep.
calling and reporting stuff that they saw. Um, Stuff like
So
them kicking them out in the cold as punishment in the snow or something to and not letting them inside as punishment or having them sit in the heat.
so
Sorry.
I'm going to take us through an initial little, and Julie, interject as we go, but here's the initial kind of timeline. And I've written all this down kind of, and it may be out of order. So I'm going to try and go in order as best as possible. But um, in 2014, the adoption was finalized through a private agency, like Julia mentioned earlier. Pretty much immediately, the abuse began to escalate. They created a caste system for their children. So, there was definitely a hierarchy. We already know that James, the 11-year-old, got the brunt of the abuse. But no one was exempt. They all got punched and slapped. And treated really terribly, which we'll get into. But James was singled out for most of the extreme abuse. Boys were abused worse than the girls.
I think there was
And
only one girl, right?
oh, true, yeah. And with all of this, they were locked in their rooms in the basement, so there's imprisonment involved. They were pretty much tortured, beaten, strangled, um,
There were
all the
cameras.
terrible
They
things.
had cameras in their rooms as well, watching them.
Yes.
So there's
And
no privacy.
and not just watching them, but if they slept wrong, like if they didn't
If
follow very strict rules, they would be punished. So,
if they were even, for example, I saw that even if they drank water too slowly,
yeah.
they were punished.
Eh, So, um let's get into some of the stuff about James, because I think he's the worst victim here, but he is also, to me, the hero of this story. I want there to be something positive about this.
He's
But I
so
think
strong and he really pulled through because he almost died multiple times while he was in treatment.
twice he almost died on them. Um, there was, oh, I'll get to it. I'm gonna have to like really focus myself because I just want to keep going off and like freaking out. But he was forced to eat hot peppers, soap, and his own vomit. So like they had him on a diet of like peanut butter. Where did I put that? Peanut
Peanut
butter,
butter,
oatmeal,
oatmeal.
carrots.
Yeah.
That was it. Um and just as a punishment, they would make him eat hot peppers, which then would make him vomit, and then she'd make him eat his vomit and then also clean it up with bleach.
And
He
then
was locked in the basement.
sometimes she would pour bleach over his head
Yes. Yeah.
when she was forcing him to clean
If
it
he
up, and then
complained.
yeah, and then she just splashed Clorox over his head, which they also found that in his system when
Oh,
he
I
was
didn't know that.
dehydrated.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh
so
wait.
like
Oh, wait. Julia. I'm sorry, guys. We're interrupting the program here to bring you a special news flash, which, Julie, this will make sense to you. So going over to my other notes, I down towards the bottom, I said I was kind of listing what their charges. So Stephanie is facing 30 criminal charges, 20 of which are felonies. I don't know what all of them are. And Robert is facing 28 total charges, 18 of those felonies. Um, but so each of them face multiple counts of aggravated assault, simple assault, tampering with or fabricating physical evidence, endangering the welfare of a child, and conspiracy. I put question mark after that. Conspiracy. What is this about? And do you want to know what my guess is, Julia,
What is it, Kelley?
the whole bleach thing. You know how, I mean, these look like Trump people through and through. I'm not going to apologize for that. Shoot me. Um, look like Trump people through and through. And guess what Trump was telling everybody to do? Drink bleach. Guarantee you. Guarantee it. She was making this kid drink fucking bleach. Like what where else is this conspiracy thing coming into play? I mean, we'll find out eventually. I just have to be patient. But what do you think about that? What could the conspiracy be
Interesting.
linked to?
I don't want to assume and be really far off on that, because conspiracies can range so far.
Yeah, but how do you get charged with? And that's something I should look into. Is how
like,
do you
is
get
the
charged
bleach
with?
necessarily connected to the conspiracy that they're charged with? Like,
True. That's the thing. Is I mean, I'm sure it plays into at least one of many conspiracies that they bought into.
interesting.
I don't know. It's pure conjecture, and that's my specialty. All right. So, getting back to it. All right, Julia. So why was it that he was having to use so much bleach and clean things up so often? Why was that?
I mean, it's probably stuff that they're trying to cover up, and they're just making him do it. Like,
Well,
and
the
all
way
the
that
vomit,
this
and all the vomit
yeah.
that there was from him being forced to, have such a restricted diet, and being forced
Well,
and
and he was
punished to have,
also
like,
he had to wear a diaper. He wasn't allowed to use the bathroom.
right.
So, and that was like for over 2 years at
And they had
least.
a lock on his door. The other kid said there was a lock on his door, which they had removed before authorities had come to examine the place. And they had a mattress moved into the room, whereas the kids said that that wasn't there and that was staged
Yeah.
because he was forced to sleep on the concrete floor
And they
with
have
no
a
blanket.
video, they have a picture on her phone, on Stephanie's phone, that I think it was like 5 days before his hospitalization, that shows him, like, she must have liked it enough to screenshot it or something, a picture of him sleeping on the cold floor. No clothes. They refused clothes. They refused love, and oftentimes they would refuse water for days at a time.
They would get punished for, quote, stealing from the sink, stealing water from the sink. When they were really thirsty and going to the sink to try to get some water, because that's a basic need. So you would use basic needs against them for punishment, which I feel like, is the FBI even allowed to do that with terrorists that they're interrogating?
I don't know, but
I
to
feel like these
to make
people
this
have
even worse. Go ahead.
I feel like they are crossing lines that even that some hardened individuals in, like, these criminal agencies have done or been doing for, like, interrogation or torture.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
it's like shit you see in, like, a movie about somebody getting kidnapped by terrorists and they're being, like, waterboarded and stuff like that. They're put in a cold place, they're stripped of their clothes. Like, this all just seems like something I don't know, seems like
And
it's not normal abuse, it is literal torture.
well, and just think, Julia, just remember back. Our abuse isn't anywhere on the scale that this
No
is.
way.
But what I can tell you is that emotional abuse has way longer lasting consequences than most physical forms of abuse. It doesn't leave a trace. It's easier to perpetrate, and especially with an adult's brain over a child's brain. The amount of manipulation, the amount of, I mean, just imagine, Julia, never in your whole life before leaving home, never having felt love. And guys, this really, I a lot of the
So, and
things.
it's hard when you're a child in the beginning in an abusive home with your real parents. And then you take it a step further, being an adopted child who's already going through the emotions of having to switch homes and already feel displaced, already feel unwanted and unloved for some reason or another.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're put in a situation where these new people that are supposed to be, you know, opening up their arms, welcoming you, taking care of you, and then them doing this, that's a new level. And these kids are probably going to have trust issues growing up, like
Well, I'd say
massive
more than
trust
that,
issues.
Julia, because, I'm in weekly therapy and
Oh,
the amount of
I can't
stuff
even imagine what they're going to have to deal with.
it's we can't even put a word to describe what these kids have to now overcome. What's the kitty doing back there?
It's the
Oh,
kitten, sorry, he was just being really cute.
hey, show his little toes. Speaking of adoptions gone right,
Hey,
do you like that transition, Julia?
yeah.
Show what he does. Show his specials.
Come here, little guy.
Who doesn't love kitties,
Come here. No,
Oh,
don't include
Julie,
that.
no.
Don't include that.
I'm
Don't
just kidding.
include it.
No.
He has extra toes.
Oh, what a special little guy.
See that little nub right there?
Dang. That's adorable. He's getting so big.
He's so cute.
Can you talk for us, Gandalf? Meow. Okay. All right.
He's
Well, never mind.
purring.
Aw. He knew you needed some support to cover this.
Seriously, I'm sorry. I get distracted easily. And plus, especially by cute things.
I know.
When I'm stressed out, I'm like,
A distraction. Where is it?
coping mechanisms.
So what I was saying about mental, look at him. He's literally trying to climb something behind you. Okay. I'm not going to look at the cat. He didn't, since he was locked in the basement for 2 years, he didn't get to interact with his siblings. And the way that the breakdown is that 3 of them are half siblings and 2 of them are half siblings. So we'll get into that more later. So during Christmas of this last year, I think is the most recent time this happened. He was given a letter from Santa saying he would not receive any presents that year because he was on the naughty list. What the fuck?
See, this takes it. Sure, you can have people that are like, well, dismissing Santa Claus and stuff, but Santa is very real for some children. And the whole concept of that takes that manipulation to a whole nother level because it's beyond just already the pain you're feeling from the people that are supposed to be loving you. But then this other figure that's outside of the situation and their mind is very real, is also rejecting them when they aren't guilty of anything. So that just adds on to the manipulation and torture tactics. Like, that's terrible. Terrible.
Yeah. And I mean, you also have to think that both of these parents, specifically Stephanie, because I mean, she definitely has more of the charges here. I see her as more responsible.
Oh yeah.
I could be wrong. I could be very wrong, more conjecture. But when you do stuff like that, it is like you're setting the child up for failure. You won't let them use the bathroom, but you're going to punish them when they have to use the bathroom, and then you put a diaper on them and they poop themselves. And that's your fault. You created that. You knew exactly what was going to happen. So it's just creating an impossible scenario for these kids to succeed or to do right. So I
Crippling.
guarantee you that I know this feeling quite well, where you spend most of your childhood life thinking, man, if I could only be better, they would love me if I could be better. And not
Yeah.
just better, but like meet some kind of standard of being good. You're like, well, apparently I'm not good. So what do I need to do to be good? And when that bar has been set at a level kind of like with our own mother, who nothing you did would convince her that you loved her. And it was this constant thing of like, you knew, and I've always loved my mother, but knowing that she's already made up her mind, or she's setting these tasks and these standards for you to fail, knowing that you will fail.
Yeah. And then, when you try to even ask for like clarification on what would constitute as proof to her, what do you need? What do you need? Oh no. Oh no, I'm not telling you. Yeah, you're just gonna have to figure that out. If you really love me, you'll know.
The kind of the mind games is kind of, it has that long lasting kind of like, doesn't always take a physical toll, but oftentimes it does. But
The kind of
let's just
manipulation that I'm able to do is get my niece stuck on the chicken dance song and annoy the shit out of my brother-in-law and sister.
dang,
Now
Julia,
she's
I kind
always
of
like, chica, chica. She wants me to play it
Look at
again.
Julie. Now I
Uh-huh.
know what to play for your kid when you have one.
and
You're
she goes,
welcome.
chica, and they're like, and I'm like, sorry. Serious again. I'm so sorry.
We have to take some levity breaks here because this is just too fucking much. So January 13th is when that official investigation opened up, but let's discuss. Let me put away this one piece of paper and go to my next one. Let's discuss the whole situation of the friendly neighbors. So how many people, Julia, reported this?
I think it was 3 different neighbors, right?
Yep. And I found a news article where one of them, Jerry Getz, was featured quite heavily. And he said that he's glad that his neighbors, Stephanie and Robert, have been charged with child abuse. And he said after they started getting all them kids, you'd hear them screaming and hollering. While Getz is happy the kids are no longer in the Duncans' care, he feels unsettled. And this was a report by Fox 43, which is a local news branch. And so Jerry, claims his wife reported abuse to Lebanon County Children and Youth Services. And the couple had wondered how 5 children and 2 adults could be living in a house listed as only having 912 square feet. And he said, because of the size of the house, I thought you'd have to have so much square feet per person. He said he blames the welfare people as much as them. I would agree, Jerry.
Yeah, it's called
And
common sense.
the news, yeah, Fox 43 asked, did you ever call and complain about them? And he said, yes, I did. My wife called and the neighbor up the street did. The lady told her from the child services told her, if they're not in danger, there ain't nothing you can do about it, said Getz. The people that are supposed to come and check on them, there ain't no way they didn't see it was just a mattress on the floor. They called this in 2019.
All right, so you know how that leads you to the next step is going, oh, well, did CPS either ignore or just neglect, investigating these cases? And then there is an article saying there's no evidence child services ignored calls in unspeakable abuse case by Lebanon County officials. And apparently somebody had tried to issue a very doctored statement about that's like very trying to like tiptoe around the fact that CPS basically wasn't to fault, so they say no evidence has surfaced that they didn't, research the case. But you know what? There's no fucking evidence that they did either. Um so after like it kind of says whatever all the statements you just kind of went over with the neighbors, um It says, let's see here. They found evidence of one possible call against them in 2019, but it was to the police, not to child services. And it was listed as a neighbor complaint, but no additional information. So they're trying to to me, the way this whole article kind of comes across is that they're trying to place blame and point your attention to something else.
Yes. Let's see here. The one thing, I'll get down to that eventually. The way that they respond is definitely super
It's just ill.
dismissive.
It's ill.
It's
It's what it is.
yeah. And I mean, here's the thing is when they called this in, they also reported stuff like they'd leave him out in the hot sun, crying for a long time. In the wintertime when it was cold, they'd sit outside crying. She'd punish them by putting them out in the cold. And then they would see her forcing one of the kids to run outside, shouting, "Exercise is good for you." And then
But
he's
it's good
heard
for
that.
you if you're getting nourishment and it's appropriate and it's not used as a method of torture. And if you have proper nourishment, like you're allowed to drink water, I'm sure she made them fucking run without having any water.
Well, and I mean, remember, guys, how much guts it takes to report something to CPS in the
Oh
first
yeah.
place.
Oh yeah.
It's like the amount of stuff that doesn't get reported is astronomical. But remember that over 75% of cases that get reported in the first place don't even get investigated. And I think one thing to remember is that there should have been a really hardcore investigation done here. I mean, in my opinion, they never showed up at the house. If they'd seen the house, it would have been a different story.
I
Guarantee it.
completely agree.
But, so, I mean, that's already shame on them. But let's pretend they did go. Let's pretend they did see. Even worse.
Yeah, that's always what we kind of end up saying is shame on them for not going if they didn't go.
mhm,
But if they did go, twice shame on them
mhm.
because of the conditions that they saw and dismissed.
So they may have, so according to like Fox 43, according to information provided by the state, there's before they can adopt, they have to pass an initial screening where they must certify they're healthy, provide financial records, and undergo criminal background checks and child abuse clearances, which is why, we don't have any prior convictions to them that, they wouldn't have been able to adopt. Then there's a family profile or meetings between the potential parents and an agency worker to see if a home is safe for a child. Now, in a tiny little house like that and 5 kids, what kind of check was done on this? Because
What are their standards?
I mean, I
Yeah.
have
Like what
I have a 3
constitutes as
bedroom
a
house and it
safe and good home?
right. That it's very shaky. And before adoption is finalized, there's a period of supervision and support for the child and new family lasting 3 to 6 months. So this abuse started early. If they were doing their due diligence and checking in and up with the kids, and 6 months, I mean, that's nothing. That's nothing. 3 months, 3 to 6. Anyways, I just think, they've fallen through every single crack that could have been fallen through.
Yeah. I agree.
Um, but
Again, the
Julia, would
system
you
is what failed them.
walk us through the video, the monitoring, the extent of that, and we'll move on past that.
Okay.
Oh, maybe we're not sharing the same notes. Did you read, Julia, that one of the criminal complaints states that every evening Stephanie and Robert would force the children to remove all the light bulbs from the oldest 3 victims' bedrooms, leaving them in complete darkness.
I didn't read that.
A forensic review of Stephanie Duncan's cell phone showed pictures of the hospitalized victim at nighttime, depicting him laying face down on the concrete floor in only a diaper. That photo is dated only a week before his hospitalization.
And her claim was that the night before, she doesn't know what happened because the night before he only had a minor headache or something, some shit like that.
So imagine you had found out, Julia, via Zillow, that the house has heat, but there is no air conditioning system. But basements, if it's like an unfinished kind of basement,
It's
or
already
even if
cooler,
it's already cooler,
let alone in January. In
concrete floors,
Pennsylvania.
concrete floors indicates an unfinished type of situation.
Yeah. I mean, that's got to be freezing. Hypothermia was one of the things that he almost died of.
Mm-hmm.
When he got tested when he was in the hospital, one of the things was hypothermia, and it was more than likely because A, he wasn't dressed. Two, it was freezing cold down there. Because, the heating system doesn't normally really work in an unfinished basement. Kind of like air conditioning in the home doesn't usually work in an unfinished attic space in the summer.
Right. Yeah.
So it's probably freezing down there.
Yeah. One of the prosecutors, district attorney, she said, frankly, jail is a far better existence than what the 11-year-old boy dealt with. Frankly, if he had not gotten emergency medical care by the Hershey Medical Center team, he would have died. That little boy almost died twice while in their care. They could tell he was hypothermic. He had prolonged exposure to the extreme cold, and they could tell he was severely dehydrated, and there was bruising all over the little boy's body.
Oh my God.
But when they asked Stephanie why her child was hospitalized that morning, she had no explanation. According to the criminal complaint, she told investigators she had found him unresponsive in the bedroom on the 13th. The victim was unable to walk or speak, you guys. Little bitty James, we're calling James. And she allegedly smacked him, grabbed him by the neck, and drug him upstairs to the bathroom. He was forced into the shower where he was unable to stand. She forced him to eat, but he vomited anything he consumed, and a thermometer reading produced a temperature of low. The criminal complaint states that it took Duncan hours to seek medical attention for the victim after his condition did not improve.
And the only reason they took him to the hospital is because if he were to have died there,
Mm-hmm.
the kind of investigation they would have had at that point would have just stripped away everything. At least to them in that moment, they probably thought it looks good taking him to the hospital. We can keep this shit up and play it off as something else. But at least the medical professionals were able to notice and see what it was, really see it for what it was.
One other thing, I'm gonna wrap up this whole awful details are that Robert Duncan threatened to kill the 11-year-old James, holding his head really far back so he couldn't move. And Stephanie Duncan would hit him with books and pour soap into his mouth as well. The children told the investigators that this boy was given very little food. We discussed that. But he was given less than a bottle of water per day and sometimes had to drink the cat's water. And then he'd be punished for stealing water from the sink. He was not allowed around other people and not permitted to play with other children. All right, Julia, so let's get into the why and how as best as we can. The why and how, I know, is kind of like it's the mystery here, so it's going to be more conjecture, but I told you my theory is based on the overall impression that Stephanie and Robert adopted these children solely for financial assistance and not out of a desire to help children. Now, why do I think this? First, it's clear that the Duncans were abusive from the get-go, and they clearly don't love or care for any of these children. I mean, seriously. So why did they want to adopt? In Pennsylvania, There is, Julia found this resource that shows that there is adoption assistance to adoptive families that qualify for the program by fitting certain criteria that includes what, Julia? What are these really tough criteria to get this aid?
Let's read this word for word because it's just, God, it's easier than me qualifying for unemployment when I was unemployed.
Yep,
Like,
that's the truth.
so it says, how does Pennsylvania define special needs to determine eligibility? A child with special needs is defined as a child who meets all three of the following criteria. A, the child is free for adoption. B, the child has a qualifying factor or condition from the list we'll go to in a minute. C, reasonable efforts were made to place the child without adoption assistance unless it is not in the child's best interest. For example, if there is the existence of significant emotional bond between the adoptee and the adoptive parents. So that list, I think all we have to do is just start and stop with the first one. Special needs, it's not what you'd think. It could be as simple as them qualifying a factor or condition. They must meet at least one of the circumstances, which would be 5 years of age or older and under the age of 18 or 21, which could be like almost all of them. I when I heard special needs, I was thinking more of like special needs is the term for like needing more special medical attention, something like that, needing more special care, better education due to certain conditions, learning disabilities, but their version of special needs is simply just being 5 and up unless you're 18 or 21.
What else qualifies?
Be a member of a racial or ethnic minority group, which looks like they all are.
Check.
Be a member of sibling group of 2 or more placed together in the same adoptive home.
Check. Check for both, all 5 kids.
And then the last 2, I'm not sure if they apply.
They don't. I don't think. I mean, I really
think
don't.
so. Nothing was noted, so I don't think so. But the last 2 qualifying conditions would be have a physical, mental, emotional condition or disability, have a genetic condition that indicates a high risk of developing a disease or disability. But all you have to do is just meet one of those.
Yeah, and the fact that three of the children were half siblings and the other 2 were half siblings, that to me seems to be one of the clues that Stephanie and Robert were most likely receiving financial adoption assistance. But in addition, another clue I think indicates I'm not far off with my theory is the fact that the kids were all adopted through a private adoption agency, and they are able to kind of not necessarily bend the rules, but it seems like private adoption agencies can be a little bit more lenient with things. And children adopted through private agencies licensed by the Department of Public Welfare who meet the special needs criteria may be eligible for adoption assistance. The county agency determines eligibility based on federal and state law regulations. So that's great. What's your takeaway? What's your conjecture, Julie?
Oh, I believe the same thing. Money drives a lot of terrible decisions. And that movie I told you about with Marky Mark and Rose Byrne, the adoption one, that you were like, ew, no. And I was like, but I liked it. It was showing the older adopted girl or foster girl was visiting another potential foster family different than theirs, and the other foster kids in the home that she was basically interviewing, um the people, the parents there were just collecting paychecks on them, and the kids there were like, yeah, we're just a welfare check for them, you don't want to come here. And then she was like, So like it's a thing. It's a common thing.
Wow. I mean, I guess I'm just kind of learning about this because, one other piece of this puzzle. Sorry, guys, I've dropped the ball. These kids were also homeschooled. Um, they were pulled from school to be homeschooled. I don't know exactly the timeline of when that happened, but let's also remember that also it's a typical tool used by people who abuse their children to remove that kid from the school system, yank them out, they disappear from view. That means, no one's going to see the bruises all over this 11-year-old and all of the kids really. I did not hear, so I heard that they were homeschooled, but I didn't hear anything mentioned about school. And if you're busy locking up and torturing your kids, if you want to fight me and try and say that those kids were learning and, getting a better education than the public school system can provide, have at me, because I'm pretty sure you're wrong. But
yeah,
whatever.
And especially since they're trying to keep them from being reported by what CPS refers to as, I think it's mandated reporters versus permissive reporters.
Yeah. So that's the other piece here, guys, is I would think that since these kids are in the system as far as like adoption agency and there's all this other red tape, that there would be a better way to track how these kids are and their welfare. But the system that we have in place now makes it to where parents who aren't even necessarily geniuses, aren't necessarily super smart, can work the system to not only benefit monetarily from the children that they're caring for, but removing them from public school makes it to where they have that power over that kid at all times. And school is often used, kind of like in the case with poor little Rayleigh Jolyn Browning, as a form of punishment to keep an education from that child. So that's my experience with that as well, is the education was used as a tool for, if you got in trouble, guess what, you weren't going to get to learn that day, or just going to go tutor some other people's kids in a subject that you're struggling in, and not going to lift a finger to help you. It is beyond heinous that we do not have better laws implemented to track and follow our kids and our who are our future. So what are we going to do?
Well, we have to be uncomfortable first. We have to give these testimonies and these stories and these kids' stories the time of day. Because I was just speaking to a friend the other day, and they were like, what drove you to kind of do this? Because it's very specific, and like I can't even. They're like, I can't even listen to stuff like I can't look at it, and I don't look at it because it just makes me sick. And I'm like, that's why you have to. That's why you have to. Because, and I was that way for a while, because sure, a lot of us enjoy true crime stories, but when it comes to kids, it hits a very specific note, makes it very difficult to process, just because just the innocence that's just stripped away, and the damage that's done psychologically for the rest of their lives. Like, there's no going back. Even if they were to bounce back incredibly, they will always have that in the back of their minds. Always. So what we can do is, what's the term? Face the music.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree with that. And when I was talking to my therapist the other night, actually last night, this week has been hella long.
Sorry, Kelley.
uh, um, we talked about the podcast. I was asking his opinion on whether, I was doing myself harm. And I kind of just tried to say, to me, it's a positive. It's both a positive and a negative. It, of course, is a trigger. But to me, it's important that I do something to help shed light on other kids that are going through even worse stuff and try and make someone else's life better, because no one did that for us. And I think that's a reason to keep going. And I urge everyone here to start giving a damn, and start also voting, and demanding your legislators and your lawmakers to put better protective laws in place to protect children. It's not going to remove the right from the parent. Parent already has so many freaking rights coming out their ass. Seriously, guys. If
You don't have
somebody
to have had about a childhood to
No.
be passionate about this.
No.
You know how sometimes it's hard to back a cause that you don't necessarily emotionally or situation, like have a situation in the past that makes you relate to it. We need
Let me
to
say something incendiary here, Julia. I think what you're saying is, to all of those people who go and march for the right to life, why don't you give half of a damn? Why don't you give half of a damn for kids who have been born and need your help? What's your problem? And you should be ashamed that if you're one of those, that this doesn't matter to you. Because if all
why
life
can't you be
matters,
equally passionate about this cause? Search yourself, basically.
and if that fetus's right to live is more important to you than an actual living child's right to love, care, and affection and safety, then I don't know what to say to you.
You know how, okay, this is really going off rails and this is very dark and fucked up, but you know how they have like those haunted houses? It's where a lot of people think it's funny, but there are people that are genuinely afraid, and you walk through and there are these different rooms, and there are actors that are either acting like they were being sawed in half or something. If it wasn't just going to be absolutely disgusting and horrifying, um just the concept of people who do the pro-life marches but don't do anything else for other kids, if they were to walk through a haunted house basically of just children in abuse situations, and each room is a different kid going through an abuse situation, and seeing that firsthand and having to just walk away to the next room, practice that
That
guilt.
sounds like the next really twisted kind of reality show that you're going to see. Put a ugh.
I mean, because
I mean,
I feel like retching just thinking about it. But like, how do you make an impact on people who generally just seem like they're really missing the mark?
yeah.
On
All
what
right,
matters.
guys. We can all do better.
What's
Julia's doing better. I'm doing better. Going to be doing better.
trying? They're trying. We're trying.
Nice. Julia. All right. I know that was the dark one, guys, and we appreciate you hanging tight. We want to keep doing this, keep you updated on what's happening. And the next episode we'll do is a shorter one where we'll give you some updates on what's happening with some of the previous cases we've covered. But in the meantime, if you would go below and hit subscribe, thumbs up us, not thumbs down us, please. comments are fantastic. It really makes me excited to see that people care about any of these topics, because we really need to be more organized and really put our money where our mouth is. And if you would like to put your money where your mouth is, go and start becoming a donator. It could be a one-time donation, could be monthly. I do monthly for the um, Homeschools Invisible Children, or the Responsible Coalition for Responsible Home Education. They're like sister groups that are kind of watchdogs for children. And the Coalition for Responsible Home Education, they're a fantastic group and really deserve your support. So
Also,
please.
I'm sure a lot of us you know, knew or saw kids that we were pretty sure were going through something growing up, or if you know one now, if you could send us links to maybe some of that information or something that we could look into um as another case to discuss on the show, that'd be great. And that way we can even have an opportunity to talk to you for more details that you saw firsthand, because I'll tell you, it's really hard with children cases to find details that really, kind of hit the nail on the head as far as like the why or the how or whatever, because a lot of these cases kind of get sealed up, and then makes it hard to really reveal the truth so that stuff can get done for other cases. So, if you're aware of stuff, if somebody went through something, maybe they want to talk about it, get us in the loop with them, like get us in contact with them. Let's talk about it. And let's also fight for other people whose stories haven't been heard yet, too.
Julia, that was really beautifully said, and I think that's a great place to end. Thank you all, and thank you, Julia. That was tough, but I think important.